everybody, and welcome to another episode, a long overdue episode of Superheroes Movies and Superhero Movies. I'm Mr. Speck.
I'm John Hillsdale.
And today we're talking about Spider-Man Homecoming, directed by John Watts, written by Jonathan Goldstein, John Francis Daly, John Watts, Christopher Ford, Chris McKenna, and Eric Summers, from a story by Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly, and starring Tom Holland, Michael Keaton, Robert Downey Jr., Marissa Tomei, Jon Favreau, Zendaya, and some other folk. Bokeem Woodbine played the Shocker. This film was actually just released today. Technically, I guess it comes out tomorrow. But we saw it tonight, Thursday night, and we figured, what better movie than Spider-Man to have our return to the podcast, I guess.
We actually got to see it together.
Yeah, a little. I think we talked about this on the last podcast, or no, maybe no, we didn't. I just put a Facebook update.
Yeah.
But I used to live in Los Angeles, California. Now I've since relocated back to my hometown of Atlanta, Georgia. So John and I are actually doing this podcast face to face.
Yeah, first one since you were visiting for Christmas one time.
Yeah, which I want to say was 2014. Mm-hmm. So it's been 2.5 years.
We did The Punisher.
Yep.
And the Jurassic Park commentary. But since then, it's we typically would just do it over Skype, and we were coast to coast.
Yep. Which was difficult at times because of the time zone difference and everything. So that was part of the reason why it got put on hiatus, and then the move happened and all that. So we are finally back and hopefully going to be on a regular schedule, especially since now we're on the same time zone. Not only the same time zone, but pretty much the same town. I mean, basically the same town. Technically, you're in a different town, but...
Yeah, I mean, I live right down the street.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, so we should be back on track to be putting these out on a regular basis. We're going to stick to our probably bi-weekly schedule, but maybe down the line we'll get a little better than that. So anyway, Spider-Man Homecoming. Saw it tonight. Initial thoughts, John?
I liked it.
Yeah.
I heard or read somewhere that it was the best Spider-Man since Spider-Man 2, and I definitely agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
What about
you?
You?
No, I'm on the same page with you on that. Definitely enjoyed it a lot. I think if I had to rank them, I would probably put it, probably right under Spider-Man 2. At the same time, I really enjoyed the original Spider-Man, so I don't know exactly where it would fall, but it's...
Yeah, I feel the same. Like, I don't know if I liked it. I think I could say I still like Raimi's original Spider-Man better than this one.
Yeah. Which is tough because they're so different, really. This one definitely has the Marvel brand on it. I mean, not only is Robert Downey Jr. in it as Tony Stark, but I mean, it just has that the humor in it and everything, and the high tech, gadgetry and everything. If I had one complaint about the film, I would say that it almost felt like how should I describe this? It almost felt like a kid version of Iron Man, because the suit was so...
I was thinking the same thing. I was going to say, I felt like that kind of took away from Spider-Man, because it's like basically Iron Man,
right,
in a Spider-Man suit.
Right, exactly. Before we go too much further, the movie just came out, and we will be talking about the whole thing, spoilers and all that stuff. So if you haven't seen Spider-Man Homecoming, you might want to run out to your theater and see it right now. And then come back and listen to the podcast, because we will be spoiling things for you. So, so just now that's out of the way. The suit, which obviously was designed by Tony Stark and was given to him in Civil War. Before we get too far, the opening of the movie where he's doing the video diary,
yes,
and you see the Civil War scenes from
that was hilarious.
from that angle. That was awesome. Great way to start the film off, I thought.
And it reconnects you to when we got to see Spider-Man.
Right. And it kind of filled in the gaps a little bit, because in Civil War, when we first are introduced to Peter Parker, Tony Stark even kind of makes fun of him for his suit a little bit. And then when we get to Berlin, he has the new suit, so we don't get to see that happen. And so the hotel thing with Happy and everything, he's like, you didn't get the case? I thought that was really great, and it was a lot of fun. Anyway, so the suit that he's got is so high-tech that, there was a moment in the film where I thought, this is cool, but it doesn't feel like Spider-Man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Was it, do you remember what part it was?
I think it was just the whole, it was probably in Washington, D.C., and it was probably when he was talking to Suit Lady, which I liked how he called her that.
Yeah.
Or Karen, I guess.
Yeah, he later names her Karen.
I don't remember specifically what moment it was. I just remember thinking it felt like kid version of Iron Man. But I think that was kind of the point, because eventually he gets the suit taken away, and then he has to not rely on all that kind of gadgetry and stuff.
Right.
Which I think, I liked all those scenes with him in the old suit, because he had to rely on just himself.
Yeah, you talking about the last?
Yeah, like the final act, I guess, of the film.
Yeah, I thought, and that was kind of the point, with the line that I really like and just hit me when I saw the trailer was, if you're nothing without the suit, then you don't need it.
Yeah, you shouldn't have it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a good way of showing that he was someone without the suit. But it was kind of neat to see. There's that last shot where he's sitting up after the battle and everything, and he's sitting up on that building with his mask off. But he's in that old suit that he made.
Mm-hmm.
And it made him feel more like a human.
Right.
Seeing him in that homemade suit than in the Spider-Man suit. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. There was a third suit in the film, although we never actually got to see Peter Parker in it, and that was at the very, very end when Tony Stark tells him that he's going to be the next Avenger. There's 20 reporters waiting. It looked like a lot more than that, but there was reporters in the other room waiting to hear, this big announcement. And they showed the suit. When I first saw it, I thought, ugh. And then I realized it was kind of a nod to a suit that was in the comic. If you read the Civil War comic, Spider-Man has this suit that's made by Tony Stark, and it's basically an Iron Man suit, but for Spider-Man. And it has, in the comic, it actually has like these like limbs that kind of come out, like almost like not quite. They don't look like Dr. Octopus type limbs. Mm-hmm. They look like spider legs, essentially.
Right.
Even though it was, I guess, I don't know too much about it. I just know it from the Civil War comics, the graphic novel. But I was never a huge fan of that suit. It was red and gold, just like Iron Man's as well.
Yeah.
I just was never a fan of the look of the suit, I guess. But the people in the audience seemed to go for it when they saw it tonight.
Oh yeah, you heard a couple people really woot for it. I kind of felt the same way. I didn't. When it kind of zoomed up on it, I was like, it's cool looking. But it's not Spider-Man.
Right. I think you and I are on the same page with this, where we just kind of are. We like Spider-Man's costume to look like old school Spider-Man.
Right.
I don't really like a whole lot of variation of the Spider-Man costume.
Right, and the suit that they used for this movie, the one that he gets, from Tony Stark and wears throughout, is, I think, a great suit.
Yeah, I agree.
You've got little wristband like looking things on his wrists and stuff, but I don't think that
detracts.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean it's the classic Spider-Man suit with kind of a modern upgrade, and it has a lot of the I know what you're talking about, like on the wrists and on the arms. There's like those black bands and everything, which obviously the original suit didn't have. But it looks enough like the classic Spider-Man suit that it really works. Yeah. And of course, with the eyes, the way the eyes work and everything, that was really cool. That was one question I had, actually. When he goes back to the old suit, the eyes still... He's wearing the goggles, but the eyes still kind of move.
Right, and I think... and I was wondering about that too, but I think what it is when he was talking to Tony, and he mentions that he has to wear them because of the sensitivity, that since he's kind of a tech geek, that he invented them to do that.
I gotcha.
and then maybe Tony took that idea because he needed them to adjust and built them into his new suit.
Right, I gotcha.
But I thought the same thing. I was just when you first see it, you just think they're goggles,
right?
And then they were moving. It was kind of threw you off a little bit.
Yeah, I think. I mean, they didn't explain it. I like your explanation of it, so it works. But because they didn't explain it, it did throw me off a little bit too. I was like, man, I feel like they shouldn't have done that. They should have just been goggles.
Right.
It would have looked stupid, and it wouldn't look like Spider-Man, I guess. I mean, not that suit really looks like Spider-Man, but I almost feel like you should have been able to see his eyes or something like underneath it.
Yeah. I gotcha. Yeah, you're right. Why are they white?
Right. I guess the reason they're white is to make it look enough like Spider-Man so that Tony had kind of a template to work off of type of thing. This isn't the first Spider-Man where he's been in high school. Obviously, he was in high school in the original Raimi Spider-Man and in The Amazing Spider-Man. But this is the first time where I feel like he actually looked and felt like a high schooler.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I liked how this didn't feel like a Spider-Man origin movie.
No, not at all.
But you got to experience him becoming Spider-Man.
Right, absolutely.
So it was kind of interesting how that played out.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't hey, Peter Parker's getting his powers, but I guess it's because he has the suit. So he's already learned how to be Spider-Man,
right.
But now he has to kind of relearn with this suit.
Right. It's like he obviously was being Spider-Man. I think he was doing a lot of the stuff that we saw him in the beginning of the film doing. He was
right.
saving people's bicycles and giving women directions and stuff like that. And so I think that's what he was doing, little things like that. Every now and again it was a big thing where he'd save. I think, what did we see in Civil War? He saved like a bus or something, he caught a car about to be thrown into a bus or something like that. But anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, he hadn't done anything huge until he met Tony Stark and then went to Berlin and fought Captain America and all that. So yeah, he had basically learned how to use his powers, and he was using his powers as Spider-Man for good or whatever. But he wasn't really the Spider-Man that we all know.
Right.
He wasn't doing the big stuff until this film, and he didn't know how quite to do it.
Right.
And obviously he gets into a little bit of trouble with it and everything. So yeah, it's an origin story, but it's not the origin story where he gets bit by the radioactive spider and everything, which I think was a smart way to go.
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously they introduced him in Civil War, so we don't, it would be weird to go backwards, I guess. Although they kind of did that with Wonder Woman. We saw her in Batman vs. Superman, then they do like a prequel. So they could have gone that way, but we've seen Spider-Man's origin twice now, in the Raimi version and in the Mark Webb Amazing Spider-Man version. So it was a smart decision not to do that again.
And I liked how this movie focused a lot on Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And it kind of, I think that's another thing that kind of gave it a little bit of an origin story, was because we were learning who Marvel was making this, who Marvel's Peter Parker was.
Right.
So we got to see a lot of Peter Parker being Peter Parker. And that really, I thought, fleshed out Spider-Man and made you care about who was under the suit.
Right.
And that can be hard to do if you're not doing an origin story, but I think they nailed that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tom Holland, I think, is a fantastic Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And a fantastic Spider-Man.
Yep, absolutely. I definitely agree with that. I like the kind of going with the comics of Spider-Man being a jokester.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm kind of on the fence about it. Because sometimes I felt like it was a little forced.
Right.
Like a little bit too much talking.
Right. I feel like that can happen. It's like, that in the comics, he's always cracking jokes, it seems like, when he's fighting villains and whatnot. So you know that's part of Spider-Man's character, so you have to have it in there. But if it's not, like, organic, it doesn't quite work sometimes. Was there a specific joke that you had?
No. I thought a lot of it was funny, but there were times where I'm, like, trying to take the movie seriously.
Right.
And they would throw something like that at me, and I couldn't take it seriously at points where I felt like I was supposed to.
I gotcha.
Or maybe I was just craving that that old Raimi, because
right.
the Raimi Spider-Man movies they had their comedy, but they were they were being taken seriously too.
Yeah, absolutely. That is interesting, because Raimi didn't have as many Spider-Man wasn't the kind of joke-making Spider-Man that he is in this film, especially during the fight scenes and stuff. I think he had like one or two, maybe. But there is still a lot of comedy in those Raimi films.
Right.
Like in Spider-Man 2, the raindrops keep falling on my head part or whatever. Like that part's hilarious. So, although you go into Spider-Man 3 and there's some forced comedy. But Spider-Man 1 and 2 has a decent amount of comedy, but it is also very serious. Not that this one's not serious at times, but...
Right, it seemed, when Spider-Man was in the suit, when he's in the Raimi movies, when he's fighting, there's no time for jokes.
Right.
And sometimes I felt it didn't take away from the movie to where it like ruined it for me or anything in Homecoming.
Mm-hmm.
But I just felt like there were times where I wanted to see him fighting and actually, be more concerned about what was going on than trying to take the situation lightly.
Yeah, you saying that made me... I can't remember specifically. This is the problem. We mentioned this before we started recording, that the problem with doing a podcast on a movie that just came out is, number one, we can't take notes in the theater. We could, I guess, but it would be annoying for the people around us to write stuff down on our phones or whatever. And secondly, we've only seen it once. So even though we just saw it and it's fresh on our minds, there's going to be pieces that we can't quite remember exactly.
Yep.
And that's, I can't think specifically, but what you just said about him maybe not taking it seriously enough, or maybe not being concerned enough. I remember there being a moment in the movie where I was like, I can't, like, I wish I could remember what that moment was, but I do remember thinking, like, maybe you should be a little more concerned about the people you're saving or something,
right.
So yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to, whenever I see it again, I'll have to try to take note of what that was.
Speaking of being concerned, when they're on the jet, and the jet engine actually falls off.
I think that's what it was. I don't think they're above the water, because if you you
see lights in the background. But, but then they come out like when it's falling, and they start leaving the clouds. You can see that they're over the water, and you've got like the skyline below. So I thought the same thing before they showed that. I'm like, they're over a city.
Yeah.
And he just dropped a jet engine and kicked it off.
He's like, it's fine, see ya.
But I'm thinking maybe they were supposed to be over the water and they were just flying like beside the coastline.
Right, I guess. I don't know exactly where Avengers Tower is supposed to be, where they took off from, because Vulture at that point diverts the plane elsewhere. So, yeah, but I mean, when that jet engine gets tossed, you see, there's a lot of clouds there, but you see in between the clouds, you see lights in the background.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I thought the same thing. I was like, you just let that jet engine go with, no regard to who's down below.
It's actually stuck on him, so he's keeping it in the air, and he, kicks it off.
Which, I mean, I think he kind of had to do, because otherwise I think he would have gotten, pulled with it or whatever. I think that was the whole point, But yeah, I had the same thought. I was like, you're just causing all sorts of problems here, Spider-Man. Iron Man is not going to be happy.
That just landed on someone's house.
Right, exactly. And
someone did not have a good night tonight.
Yeah, 5 people are now dead. Or more if it hits more than one else. That might have been the part I was thinking of, even though that has nothing to do with jokes. Because he was not making any jokes at the time.
Right.
He was just seemingly unconcerned about the people on the ground. let's talk about some of Peter Parker's friends. Ned, the best friend character. I thought he was played by Jacob. I'm not going to get his last name right. Batalon. I don't know. Anyway, his best friend Ned. What did you think about the fact that we knew this from the preview? But what did you think about the fact that Ned knows who Spider-Man is, or knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man?
I think it's a good call.
Yeah,
because it gives him someone to talk to.
Right, absolutely.
Throughout the movie, someone, so then they showed that. And I thought the humor with that was off and on. Like, I liked some of it, but it seems a little repetitive. But yeah, I thought that was a good call.
You just made me, I don't know how you did this, but you just made me realize another moment where I thought he needed to be a little more concerned. There were, and it also might fall into the forced joke category. When he was fighting Shocker he leaves Homecoming and runs out into the parking lot, and Shocker's hitting him with school buses and stuff.
Yeah,
he's basically, getting the crap beat out of him, and he gets thrown into a bus, and he sees gum underneath the seat of the bus.
Right.
And he just goes, "That's gross." And I remember thinking, like, maybe you shouldn't be focused on that right now.
Exactly.
Maybe you should be focused on this fight.
Like, it was funny, but
right.
I thought the same thing. I'm like, it was the first thing that entered my mind was, you just got thrown into a bus,
right.
And you're thinking about gum on the bottom of the seat.
Maybe Peter Parker's a little ADD. But no, there was a lot of moments with Peter Parker and with Ned where no matter what he was doing in the middle of a fight or in the middle of whatever, he would be like, "Oh, that's awesome," which is a kid thing to do. So it maybe falls in line with the teenager aspect of Peter Parker, but they did it a lot, almost maybe too much.
Mm-hmm. You talking about Ned?
I'm talking about both of them, really. I mean, Peter Parker did it a lot in the suit, especially when they take the training wheel protocol off and he's getting all the new stuff. He's like, "Oh, that's awesome."
He does it in Civil War, too. I watched that last night, and he says, like, "That's awesome, man," like 3 times. And he's got, like, 5 minutes in the movie.
Right, yeah.
What did you think of Ned saving him?
I actually didn't mind that. I mean, I thought Ned, throughout the whole movie, is constantly kind of asking him what he can do and obviously wants to be kind of on his team. He wants to be the man in the chair, you remember?
Right.
So the fact that he kind of gets to help out Spider-Man and stuff, I actually thought that was, pretty decent. It's a little far-fetched because I don't know. I mean, I guess it's not that far-fetched. He came out of the building looking for Peter, perhaps, and picked up the web shooter. But yeah, I didn't mind it.
He's got good aim.
Yeah, he's got great aim. Great aim, in fact.
I was a little... I think I would have taken a different route myself. Yeah.
I didn't actually... When it happened, I kept... One of the things I'm glad they didn't do in the film was... Tony Stark shows up. Well, Iron Man, I guess. Iron Man's suit shows up to help him a couple of times. Saves him from drowning that one time. And then saves the fairy. And so I was a little nervous that Iron Man was going to show up in the final act with the plane and Vulture on the beach and everything. And I'm glad they didn't do that because, again, it wouldn't have felt like Spider-Man. It wouldn't have felt like Spider-Man's movie, really, if Spider-Man keeps having to get saved by Iron Man or Iron Man keeps coming in to save the day. So yeah, I was really happy that they didn't do that. But I was expecting it to be Iron Man when you first see the web kind of come from off screen. I thought it was going to be like Iron Man had installed web shooters or something stupid like in his suit. So I was also really glad that it wasn't Iron Man.
He's like, that tech's better than my beams.
Right.
I'm going to use webbing.
Sometimes lasers is just too much. Webbing is perfect.
Speaking of the fairy, I thought, I don't think that would have been floating anymore.
You think it would have, probably
it would have sunk
faster?
Yeah.
Or even after he sealed it up?
No, well, not necessarily that. Like, I'm okay with I don't think he would have had time to. I think it would have been already in the bottom of the water.
Right.
Like, Spider-Man uses webbing to like kind of delay it, but that seemed like it was, that they were trying to make you feel like that was enough to keep it afloat.
Right. And a lot of it was already underwater. Because, the cars,
right, exactly.
That level with the cars, all those cars were already submerged.
So maybe I don't, I'm not an engineer. Maybe I don't understand the physics of a ferry. But I personally think that it would have gone under.
Yeah.
So that one was a little bit hard for me to swallow.
Yeah. The ferry scene with him, with the, at first he just tries to use the webbing against like the support beams or whatever, but then eventually it starts to fall apart again, and he's in between the two pieces. That part's in the trailer too, but that part, whenever I see that part,
mind you, Spider-Man 2,
yes, with the train,
yep,
and I think the train scene honestly was better.
Absolutely,
so
absolutely.
But yeah, that's what I think of. I mean, I guess you can't help but think of it just because of the way he was doing it. It was the same type of thing, holding the webbing to try to stop a passenger-loaded vehicle, I guess. But
yeah, the ferry scene didn't do a lot for me.
Right.
It was important because it's when he
gets his suit taken away and all that.
Well, that and he finds out who
Vulture is, right?
Right. I liked the Washington Monument scene.
Yes, I did too.
The only problem I had with that was his aim when he uses the helicopter,
mm-hmm.
and he actually is able to get through the window at that point.
Right.
Like, it was like Luke Skywalker going into the hole in the.
To his credit, he did crack it right before the helicopter showed up. So maybe it was like.
No, it's not. It wasn't a problem with that. It was just like that was
just the fact that it was such a small target.
It was like the size of his body.
Right. But he is Spider-Man.
He is Spider-Man. He's got spider sense. So,
and he has this technological suit.
He does. The suit got him through.
Yeah, I think so.
We'll say that. But I thought it was. I really liked the moment where he actually goes into the elevator and like is using his feet to prop it up
mm-hmm.
with the webbing, and that kind of felt like you have talked about it before many times about. When Superman in the original Superman movie grabs the helicopter,
mm-hmm.
Just that
with one hand,
just that heroic feeling you get.
Yeah,
that elevator scene in Homecoming kind of did that for me.
Yeah,
and I think it was actually his line that a lot of people laughed at, but I thought it was a moving line. He was like, "Don't worry about it. I got you guys."
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like a very relieving moment that I thought delivered.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. Speaking of Vulture, I guess let's talk about Michael Keaton. What did you think about him?
Thought he did great.
Yeah.
I felt like actually the entire movie I kind of noticed. For me, and maybe it was just because I was having to adjust to this new Spider-Man, but I felt like the movie got better as it went on.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like the introduction of Michael Keaton's character, the first scene, like the actual introduction of him, was cool. I liked it. The punch felt a little.
When it says 8 years later and you see him.
No, when he actually like punches the guy.
Oh, yeah,
that was a little weird.
Yeah, that was a little weird.
But I felt like his character, as the movie went on, got a lot stronger and developed better, and I felt like the movie did that too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, by the end of the movie, I thought Michael Keaton was just nailing it.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. Michael Keaton, I think, is just pretty much good in everything he does, and it's nice to see that he's had a bit of a comeback the last few years. It's interesting. It seems to always happen when an actor gets nominated for an Oscar. Their next movie. It's not his next movie, but either their next movie or the second to next movie is a superhero film. The only other person I have in mind is Thomas Hayden Church. He got nominated for an Oscar in Sideways in 2004. and then he does
Spider-Man
Spider-Man 3.
Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, exactly. Not that I think Michael Keaton needed it, but because he was, he did Birdman.
He did Birdman, and now he's playing
a
Birdman.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that. That's actually kind of funny. He did Birdman, then he did Spotlight, and then so he was having a pretty good couple of years anyway, so he didn't really need to do a superhero movie. But I'm glad he did, because I think he did a great job with it, and I'm also glad it did well, because Spider-Man 3 didn't exactly work out for Thomas Hayden Church. Not that he's doing terribly, but he's probably not going to be doing as good as Michael Keaton's going to be doing. But it was just cool too to see Batman play a villain in a Marvel movie. But one of the things I was going to say is, movies, and especially superhero movies, seem to be just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so it's always kind of nice to me when we see a superhero movie where, like, the world is not in peril, or, like, even an entire city.
You mean bigger and bigger and bigger as in, like, ambitious?
Yeah, I guess ambitious in terms of from a filmmaking standpoint. I mean, you think about, like, the first Spider-Man, and the big climax of it was save Mary Jane or save this one little sky car, whatever you want to call it, of people. And that was pretty much it. And then you go to, like, Avengers. Well, obviously Avengers has to be big, but some of the other superhero movies down the line, where it's like they feel like they're having to save the entire world.
Right. And we talked about, Thor was kind of, I think, one that toned that down a lot.
Right. And so I always appreciate it. And I think what I was going to say was what I appreciate about this film is it feels very big. Like, if you compare it to Spider-Man 1 or even Spider-Man 2, I mean, the whole plane sequence is, like, way bigger than anything in those films. But it's still kind of toned down, and the villain's plan is not, like, world domination or anything like that. It's just he's trying to basically make money for his family, and he's stealing things and then selling weapons. And so I appreciated how, I mean, his goals were ambitious, especially at the end, to steal Tony Stark stuff. But it was not a huge, like, global domination or whatever, blow up the world type of thing that, Loki can do or something.
Right.
So yeah, I like that. And also, I guess they kind of had to tone it down a little bit because Spider-Man is, Tony Stark doesn't want him to go off on the Avengers mission, so he has to kind of stay in Queens and do.
That's true. He's like we said, he's helping ladies find, with directions, and his bigger thing was, of course, after the Avengers fight, was stopping the Avengers robbing the bank.
Right. Which did not go well for him. I mean, he stopped them, but he also almost killed the sandwich shop guy or whatever.
Right. So you don't want to throw him in those situations and then have him saving the world. But I agree. I don't think world domination situations should be even a frequent.
Right, I
thing.
agree. Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely appreciated that.
Mm-hmm. There was one of the things I really appreciated about this movie is, do you remember playing? I know you remember playing Spider-Man 2, the video game, on either Xbox or PlayStation 2. But do you remember playing the first Spider-Man video game?
For the movie?
Yeah.
No.
In Spider-Man 2...
actually, I take that back. The first one I might not have played 2. I might have played just the first one.
I think you played 2 because 2 was an awesome game. And it was an open world type of thing. You could pretty much go anywhere in New York City.
So the first one wasn't like that?
No, the first one unfortunately wasn't like that.
Okay,
it wasn't open world. And I remember one of the things I had an issue with Spider-Man 1 is it didn't matter where you were, you could always shoot your web and swing.
Uh-huh.
And I liked how in this movie he gets into I think it's a golf course. He runs out of things to swing from, and he just has to start running across the golf course. And he goes, "This sucks."
Yeah, I loved that.
Yeah, I thought that was great because you always see him. I mean, he's always in the city usually, but you always see him swinging from things. And I think everybody has had that question, like, what happens when he doesn't have something to swing from?
Right.
And we got to see the answer to that. Too.
Yep.
So that was cool. I appreciated that a lot. Skipping to the very end, what did you think about the reveal that Aunt May sees him in the Spider-Man suit?
It was funny.
Yeah, it was funny.
But I mean, it's gonna be interesting.
It's very different. I don't think, as far as I know, and granted, I'm not reading the comics currently or anything like that, but as far as I know, I don't think Aunt May has ever known that that Peter Parker was Spider-Man.
I'm not sure either.
We talked about it on the Spider-Man 2 episode, that the Aunt May in that film talks to him as if she does know that he's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And I like that. In our opinions, she knows. And I like that about her. But it's never been,
disclosed.
It's never been in any of the movies or anything like that. Or even on the animated show, I remember he always kept having to hide it from Aunt May on the animated show.
Yeah, I don't think she even gave hint that she might have known in the animated.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So this is the first time where it's going to be kind of out in the open that Aunt May knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
And it's very early on.
Very early on, yeah. So that'll be interesting to see where that kind of goes. Marissa Tomei obviously plays Aunt May, and I think it's Aunt May has always been portrayed as more of an older lady, and
Sally Field kind of
she
brought it back a little bit,
right?
But not to the degree that this is,
right. She's much younger, Aunt May, in this film. But I think it works. I think it gives them a better kind of relationship and everything. I think it's... because it's always felt a little more like Grandma May rather than Aunt May, And I think this works out a little better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. Like, his mom had quite an older sister.
Right.
Or she had him...
way late.
As a very old lady. What did you think about MJ?
I like the character, which throughout the movie she's known as Michelle.
Mm-hmm. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah.
Like, why did they change her name?
I remember when she was cast as Spider-Man, or not as Spider-Man, in Spider-Man. They didn't say who she was playing, and the internet kind of started guessing that she was playing Mary Jane, and then it was later revealed that she was playing a character named Michelle. So I don't know if it was... I don't feel like it was a last-minute decision, because throughout the whole film she's referred to as Michelle and everything. So,
right.
But the internet was technically right, because she's not Mary Jane, she's Michelle something, but she's MJ. So anyway, I like the character. I thought she was funny. She had a lot of good moments in the film, but when she says at the end that her friends call her MJ, I just kind of shook my head. I was like, I like that character, but I like her as Michelle. I don't like her as MJ. And it's just because it's not who I see MJ being. I don't see MJ as being kind of that sarcastic, kind of outsider, I guess, personality, where she's kind of like everything is dumb. Or I guess that's a bit of a hipster, maybe? I don't know. But like I said, I like the character, but that's just not who I kind of see MJ as. But maybe, I don't know, maybe in the next film I'll like her.
I know what you're saying. Yeah, I can agree with that. I liked her character too. But, I kind of liked the idea of her being MJ.
Oh, okay.
So, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, like I said, in the next film, maybe I'll be totally on board with it. But it just kind of felt like... in Dark Knight Rises, you saw that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it's revealed at the end that his name is Robin,
right?
That's kind of what it felt like. Like they were basically saying, which I liked in Dark Knight Rises, but they're basically saying this guy's Robin, but he's not really Robin,
right?
And that's what it felt like in this movie. This is MJ, but it's not really MJ,
right? Well, maybe there'll be a Mary Jane.
Sure. Which then it'll just get confusing, I don't know. I'll be like, wait,
I thought me MJ too.
Yeah. So yeah, what did you think about the guy that played Flash?
Honestly, he kind of annoyed me.
Right, which I guess kind of worked. I think that maybe he was supposed to be a bit annoying. I feel like it was a different type of bully than what Flash has always been portrayed in the past as. I think even in the comics, Flash was supposed to be kind of a jock, like a bigger guy, supposed to be kind of imposing over nerdy Peter Parker, and they decided to go with a different kind of version of I almost said the Flash, but of Flash, and I think it kind of worked actually. I think he did okay. He wasn't. I didn't feel like he was bullying him that much. He made fun of his name a bit,
right?
But other
there was
than that,
a moment in class where Peter answers and he's
like,
around.
"You're dead."
Yeah,
but I never got the feeling
feel like he was actually in danger.
Right,
of being
exactly.
Beat up.
Right. I never got the feeling that Flash was going to ever beat him up.
Right.
Ever.
And then he had that joke in the Washington Monument, which I thought I didn't really like, when he leans over after Spider-Man falls down. And he's "Are you really friends with Peter Parker?"
Yeah. I could have used that, or that could have been left out, and I would have been fine with it. But other than that, I thought he was okay. I guess I'm on the fence with it.
Yeah, I can go with that. Like, he wasn't awful, but I think that line, was when I realized he wasn't really doing much for me.
Right.
So, I liked that the story revolved around taking stuff from the Avengers movie. You got this alien tech where they brought back the Avengers storyline, and as far as the aliens that attacked, and were scrapping stuff from that and got in the wrong hands, and I thought we kind of talked about how it wasn't world domination,
right?
So I thought that was an interesting choice, going back and using alien tech.
Yeah, I liked how the movie opened up, where we see the aftermath of Avengers 1. But I do remember thinking, I was like, that movie, I started kind of doing the math in my brain. I was like, that movie came out in 2012, so I was like, has this destruction and stuff been around for 5 years? Is that like what they're trying to say? And then it said 8 years later, so I was like, oh, okay. So I guess technically, if Avengers was in present day when it came out in 2012, maybe it was 2011, because that's when they filmed it. I don't know how you would want to figure that out, but Spider-Man Homecoming is technically in the future, right? 8 years. It's like
right.
2020 or 2019. But one of the other things I kind of found interesting about it was, up until Civil War, Tony Stark didn't seem all that concerned about the destruction that the Avengers were causing and things like that. And it wasn't until it was kind of brought up to his attention and the Accords and all that stuff that he started kind of really trying to fix things, I guess. And yet, in this film, that I forget what the company was called. Do you remember what it was called? But it was supposedly one of Tony Stark's companies that come
right.
in and take over from Adrian Toomes and say, we're going to be in charge of cleaning up all the Avengers messes, basically. And then you show, like, I think it's 2 minutes later or something, they show you that Tony Stark owns that company or whatever. So I guess he was already, maybe he just felt obligated to do it since he caused that destruction. But I thought that was kind of interesting. That so, like, probably if you say Spider-Man Homecoming's present day is 8 years later, maybe 7 years before or 7 years after that happened is when when Civil War happened. I don't know. It just seemed a little strange to me, but at the same time, without it, they wouldn't have a story because Adrian Toomes wouldn't have anything to steal anything from.
Right. And maybe he did it so that people that he wasn't able to monitor weren't getting their hands on certain
alien tech and stuff, right? Which he obviously wasn't doing a great job of because Vulture was able to steal it and everything. Two things I thought of just now. What did you think about Shocker being in the film?
I was excited that kind of.
Mm-hmm.
When they first say his name, you're like, we got two villains, or at least we've got the mention of a second villain.
Right.
Is he going to be, a major villain in this movie, and are we going to get too many villains again?
Right.
But they, didn't do that, and I liked that the coat he was wearing was very, costume-esque as to who the character is.
Right, absolutely. When I remember hearing on the internet a long time ago that Bokeem Woodbine was going to be playing the Shocker. And then in the film, the first guy, played by Logan Marshall Green, gets referred to as the Shocker, and he's got the yellow sleeves on his arms and everything. So I thought, they got it backwards, I guess, on the internet. It's actually this guy playing the Shocker, and then that guy gets zapped. And Michael Keaton tells Bokeem Woodbine, he's like, "You're the new Shocker," or whatever. And I was like, all right, never mind. But I remember when they announced that the Shocker was going to be in the film, I was like, I was a little worried. You never want the Spider-Man 3 thing to happen where there's just too many things going on. But I thought they actually did a pretty good job with him.
Yeah, he was more of like a henchman,
right,
kind of guy.
And they didn't kill him. He just webs him to a school bus at the end of the film. So it's very possible he could come back.
Yeah, I remember seeing when the first guy got zapped, I was like, well, there goes the Shocker.
Right. Yeah.
They were like, we're never going to use him as the main villain, so we'll just get rid of him.
Just get rid of him. I forgot what the second thing I was going to say was, but we'll go ahead, and since we're talking about the Shocker, the post-credits scene in the film introduces another character, and I'm ashamed to admit that I actually had no idea who it was. I could tell it was supposed to be somebody, didn't know who it was exactly, had to look it up, and that character at the end of the film with the scar on his face is supposed to be Scorpion, which is obviously another Spider-Man villain. So they're setting it up possibly to have Scorpion in the next film.
I would imagine that's the plan right now.
Yeah. Or at least have him be one of the villains in the next film.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he would be the main villain, but...
That's true. And that's a good question. What villains do you think they would use in the next one?
I think, if I had to guess, I think they would probably... I want to say they'd go back to Dr. Octopus. But that's a great question, because I don't think they're going to do Green Goblin again.
No, he's been used twice.
Right. And, Electro was in Amazing Spider-Man 2, so it's like that's too recent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're going to stay away from Spider-Man 3 villains. Sony already has like a Venom movie in the works, right? Like Tom Hardy's playing Venom or something like that. So I don't really think they're going to do Venom. And I don't think they'd want to do Sandman just because everybody would think of Spider-Man 3. And I think they're trying to stay away. If they're smart, I think they would stay away from Spider-Man 3. Or anything that had, just to do
That's
with
true, and that's unfortunate because I really like Sandman.
Yeah, I do
as
too.
A character.
And maybe they could do another version of him down the road. But I honestly think it's probably would be Dr. Octopus. But I don't know. I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm. And of course you have Mysterio.
Right.
That has been brought to light by the fans for a long time, and apparently Bruce Campbell was in rumors to play him back when Raimi was...
Yeah, I think he was... Was he going to play him in Spider-Man 4? I know Vulture was supposed to be in Spider-Man 4, and I think John Malkovich had actually been cast as Vulture.
And that would have been great, too.
That would have been sweet. And I want to say, unless it's just fan rumor, but I want to say Bruce Campbell was cast, or was in talks to play Mysterio in Spider-Man 4. So it was going to be Vulture and Mysterio, I think. Mysterio is somebody that I would really like to see, but I also really would be curious as to how...
Right, he's such an odd-looking character.
How they would bring him to life, and also just how they make him, menacing enough, I guess. Because, he's basically... He's just a regular dude, right? He's just...
Yeah.
Like a Hollywood special effects guy.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, it'd be I would really like to see Mysterio, but... Yeah, I'd also be very curious as to how they would make him, look and be. But I thought they did a great job in this film with the look of Vulture. I thought Vulture.
Yeah, I definitely liked it.
Yeah, I thought it looked really. It's obviously quite different than the Vulture of the comics, where it's a bald-headed guy, in essentially a bird costume.
And he's got that feather around the neck, which they kind of alluded to with his
bomber jacket type thing. Yeah, which I thought that was really cool. I was I was really glad they did that. And there's one moment in the very beginning of the film, I think it's right after it says 8 years later, when the first time you see Vulture land and he takes off his mask. At one point, it almost kind of looks like a beak. I got that for a second. It was like he took off the eye part and it had the breathing apparatus, I guess, on there.
Right.
And it just kind of comes to a point a little bit and looked like a beak for half a second. I'm glad they didn't really stay on it to to be like, look, I'm the Vulture. But for half a second, I was like, oh, that was kind of cool. I also liked how it is an origin story for Vulture, but they completely skip over that. Mm-hmm. It was basically just like, this guy's really good at making stuff. 8 years later, he's got the wings and everything. And I thought it worked really well.
That's a good point. You don't want to do that with every movie.
Right, I agree.
But yeah, it definitely worked in this one, especially with how many Spider-Man movies we've had, and we just kind of wanted to get to the story.
Absolutely.
With this one.
Yep. And if they had done the origin, it would have made it probably that much longer. And not that it was a long movie, and it didn't feel long by any means. It was only 2 hours and 14 minutes, I think, which for superhero movies is pretty short, I guess. Yeah. So I thought it was the perfect length. It had great pacing. It felt, it went pretty quickly and everything. So, yeah. What did you think about the final post-credit sequence with Captain America?
I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah. It reminded me of I don't. Have you seen the Simpsons movie?
Yeah.
Did you see it in the theater?
Yes, I did.
So that opening moment where he's talking about how stupid it is for people to pay for something they can watch for free, and then he turns around and points at the audience.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah, it was perfect. We had this conversation in the theater, actually. I think right before that showed, about how Marvel is now getting to the point where the important post-credit scenes are actually mid-credit scenes, and the actual post-credit scenes are just usually kind of throwaway gags. And I think that started with Avengers, because the post-credit scene in Avengers was them eating that shawarma, if you remember, and they were all just kind of like Captain America was just sitting there, and they all just kind of seemed like in a daze from the battle that just happened. And it was hilarious, and I'm glad that was the post-credit scene. And it seems like after that, they've started getting away from putting the real important stuff at the very end and putting the important, quote-unquote, important stuff in the middle of the credits.
But people are never going to not wait
get up.
for
wait, yeah.
But I kind of wonder, was that them kind of trying to tell the audience, we're not going to put, you don't have to wait anymore.
Right. Right. The real, if you want to leave during the credits, it's fine. But I actually kind of miss the Phase 1 event, Phase 1 Marvel movies, where they teased the next movie with the post-credit scenes. I mean, the very end of Iron Man 1 had Samuel L. Jackson coming out as Nick Fury and said, I want to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative. And that got everybody pumped. And I made the stupid mistake of leaving before that. I saw that, so I didn't get to see that until the DVD. And I remember at the end of Iron Man 2, we saw Coulson arrive in New Mexico, and you saw Thor's hammer. And that was the big tease to Thor's to Thor. I forget what the one at the end of Thor was. But yeah, I kind of missed those, hinting at... There was a guy in front of us who, after that Captain America part ended, most everybody laughed at it and was like, that was funny.
I heard him.
But there was one guy who got up and was like, I'm a little pissed off. And I think he was really hoping to see some Avengers Infinity War or something, some footage. But I think the next movie on Marvel's plate is, or slate, is Thor Ragnarok, which comes out this November, I think.
Well, and you've got Black Panther.
Right, which is actually, I think, 2018, so it comes out next year. So Thor Ragnarok's first, and then I think it's Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
And then Avengers Infinity War, right? Or is there another one in between?
I think that's it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So yeah, it would have been cool to see a tease for any of those, I think. A little bit of Thor Ragnarok, or maybe a little bit of Black Panther. But Avengers Infinity War seems like the logical choice, just because Spider-Man's going to be in that one.
Right. And plus, we've gotten trailers.
Right.
Or teasers for both.
For Black Panther, yeah, and Thor. That's true. So yeah, it would have been nice to get a little tease for that. But no such luck. Guardians, you haven't seen the second Guardians, but so I won't say anything about it, but Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 had not 1, not 2, but 5, I believe, post-credit sequences.
Wow.
And none of them were really important.
That's what I'm saying. I think they just kind of have gotten to the point where they're like,
we'll just do something funny.
Yeah. What are we supposed to put in here?
Well, they've gotten to the point now where they don't have to tease the next film.
They don't have to tease the next film.
People are going to see it anyway.
Yeah, that's true. But, like, you kind of want to... Like, what are they going to... we know where we're headed.
Right.
We've got, Thanos is coming.
Right. Right, that's true. So... All right, John, well, it's that time to rate the film. You still doing your... It's been a while, so... are you still doing your 5-star Netflix
Yeah, I'm not happy
rating?
about Netflix switching to the thumbs up, thumbs down.
Oh, that's
system.
right. They don't even have the 5 stars
anymore.
anymore.
And
right.
I do not approve of that. So I'm going to keep it going. And I'm going to give Spider-Man Homecoming 4 out of 5 stars.
4 out of 5 stars. I am going to give it... I think I'm going to give it an A-. I was originally thinking an A, and then I think the more we talked... It's not that I obviously don't dislike the film at all. I think it's awesome, and I can't wait to see it again. But just a few things we talked about here and there about little things that we maybe had a little slight problem with. I think just brought it down just slightly to an A-.
Yeah, I agree with that. As I think this was a good introduction movie for Spider-Man.
Absolutely.
For the Marvel Spider-Man.
Right.
And I think that what they can do with the second one it has a lot of foundation to it.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like Spider-Man 2 did with Sam Raimi.
Yeah. Well, we'd love to know what you think about Spider-Man Homecoming. You can leave us a comment on Facebook.com/SM and SM Podcast. You can tweet at us at Cinema Heroes, or you can leave us a comment on our website, www.cinemaheroes.com. I think that about wraps it up for this episode. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzo.
Thanks for listening.